Howdy, friends, and welcome to the StoryField. This is a podcast where we talk about business, faith, and life in general.
Okay, so here's the deal. We want you to be encouraged. We want you living in hope. This life we live is complex. It's hard at times. At the StoryField, you will find great stories of normal people just like us who will inspire you. Our goal is that you leave encouraged, inspired, and excited to move forward in life. But before we get started, one thing though, if you're listening and you find yourself really hopeless right now, send us an email at hope@thestoryfield.com so we can pray for you. Thanks for joining us today. Let's get started.
Well, hey, StoryField, please welcome Sue Becker. Sue, thank you for making time today. We're so excited to have you on the show.
I am so excited to be here. I just really excited that you invited me, and I can't wait to share my story.
Okay. Well, today is a first for us. You'll see a lot more people around the proverbial table. And so we have two more co-host guests today with Mike and I. My wife, Julie. Julie, say hello.
Hello.
And my sister-in-law, Sally. Sally, say hi.
Hello.
So, Sue, we had to call in our subject matter experts with you today because I think if it was left to Mike and I, we'd just be kind of staring at you, not knowing exactly what to ask you. But Julie and Sally and our families have been making a ton of bread and learned a lot from you and your books and resources. So I thought it'd just be fun if we could get them around because they can ask some real questions that'll actually mean something more than Mike and I could pull off at this point on our knowledge level. So everybody, thanks for making time today. So, okay, so before we get going, here's what I know about you so far. So I want you to fill in the gaps as far as a little bit of a biography on you. So it's clear, and you are a follower of Jesus, and you love being used to help people find health and freedom, both like spiritually and physically.
Yes.
You've been married 49 years. You have nine kids, and you're waiting on number 18 and 19 grandchildren.
18's actually been born. He was,
Oh
almost
goodness.
2 weeks old. So, and then 19, and I just found out I'm going to be a great grandma
Oh my gosh.
next year. So yeah.
Well, if you want 4 more kids, then we're up for adoption as well. That's amazing. 18 and 19 and great. So congrats. So
thank you.
You guys are the founder of a company called the Bread Beckers, and you can find the Bread Beckers at www.breadbeckers.com.
Yes.
So it's a real food store. So you guys are on a mission to show how easy real food is to make and how delicious it is. And you offer all kinds of stuff like nutrition, lifestyle network. You have co-op locations for bulk food purchasing all over the country, and you really have a healthy and robust online store. So for those, I just wanted to get that at the front of this episode for those who need to check out breadbeckers.com, and that's where we order through your co-op a lot of stuff online. So thank you for that. Another book I've been laying around is you're an author of the book called The Essential Homegrown Flour Book.
Yes.
Julie and I were looking at that even just yesterday. And you can learn complete milling and baking techniques with over 100 recipes. Super sweet book. We have it. I think Sally probably has it as well. And last couple things, I know you just done a lot. So yep, there it is, Sally. Thank you. And then we really would consider you the expert on the benefits of whole grain nutrition and baking with fresh milled flour, which I want you to, we'll obviously get into. And you are a podcaster, Sue's Healthy Minutes.
I am.
And finally, you teach cooking classes. So that was awesome and long. You've done a lot, and just thank you. So, okay, let's get going. So the way we like to do the StoryField, and then we'll get into some topic stuff quick, is we want to hear a little bit on your story. We want you to kind of take us on a little bit of a timeline.
Yes.
So tell us about, growing up, childhood, get us to where you grew up, your family, kids, and then
my goodness. Okay.
How you are where you're at now, and then we'll get into some topics.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Savannah, Georgia, so I'm a born and raised Southern girl, and graduated high school. I tell people many, many years ago, I think 52 years now. I graduated high school, went off to the University of Georgia. Go Dogs.
I know. So Mike is a
Because
big Texas fan. I don't know if they're ever going to be.
Let's not talk
I
about that
know.
right now.
Yeah.
Let's save that for maybe the end.
I thought about that as I went and got my Bulldog water cup here.
I'm glad you're representing still.
Yes, I am definitely representing. But I went off to college, University of Georgia, as a pre-med student because I loved biochemistry, physiology, everything about the body, had a passion. I wanted to save the world, that's what we think. And got there and went, ooh, I don't want to be in school that long. I laugh now and say I'm a much better student now than I ever was in college. I mean, I was an okay student. I was a good student, and I loved the sciences particularly. But I realized I didn't want to be in school that long, and I knew that I didn't want that grueling a career after college. And I knew I wanted to be ultimately a wife and a mother. That was my desire. And I'm not saying you can't be a doctor and be a wife and a mother. I know plenty of people that are, but I just knew that probably wasn't the role I wanted to go through. So got accepted into pharmacy school, spent 1 quarter there and went, ooh, this isn't really what I want to do either. And as a junior in college, you're kind of getting frantic. So I was directed, though, by the dean of pharmacy school to food science. It was an up and coming industry at the time. All my credits transferred, which was great. And it was a wide open field. And so I focused more on microbiology. And after graduating, I worked for Kraft Foods as a microbiologist in their lab for almost 5 years until I had my first child. But after graduating, I continued to study. I just wanted to learn about the body and the nutrients that nourish our body and what they did and what they do and how deficiencies affect our health. And so I just continued to study. And then I fed my family. Well, it was Brad and I at the time. We ate fairly healthy. I grew up Southern, so I cook, we never did boxes and things like that. Whoever heard of that? But anyway, then when I had my first child, I think I really ramped up even more. I made all my baby food. I found a doctor that believed in nutrition. And so that was kind of my lifestyle. And I'd always read whole wheat flour is healthier, and I knew that, but didn't totally grasp it. And I was buying whole wheat flour from the store. I don't know if you've ever tried to use whole wheat flour from the store. It's gross. Just don't even try. If you haven't, don't go there. It was dry and gritty, and I was having to put white flour in there to make it, soft and fluffy things. And so kind of gave up on that and just started buying whole wheat bread, the best I knew. And so kind of kept plugging along with that. Well, then in 1991, I had 5 children by 1991, and I came across a publication entitled How to Greatly Reduce the Risk of Common Diseases. It's not in print today, but in this journal, it was the history of white flour was presented, the diseases that came on the scene shortly after, and then it had a brief discussion of some of the common diseases that plague America: constipation, diverticulitis, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, varicose veins, gallbladder issues, all these very common issues, and showed how it was directly related to the missing fiber and the missing nutrients that have been sifted away when the steel rolling mills came on the scene in the early 1900s and took the bran and germ out and made white flour available for everybody. And with my background and my passion for health, and it all made perfect sense. It made scientific sense, but also as a born again believer in Jesus Christ and a student of the Bible, it made biblical sense too. I laugh. I tell people I find bread scriptures everywhere. Those are the ones that jump out at me, but it just resonated with me. And to be honest, when I read it, it was kind of like, why did I not see this before in all my studies? Why didn't I put this piece of the puzzle in there? And but not just telling me about the nutritional benefits of all this, it introduced me to the whole concept of an in-home flour mill and milling my own grain to make all of my own bread. That was like mind-blowing. So that was in 1991. My husband bought me a grain mill for my birthday, and I laugh. I say, "Husbands, this is an appliance you can buy for your wife for her birthday or Christmas
It's
or
not
whatever."
going to be offensive either. Like, so,
Not at
yeah.
all. Yeah, and you get her the mixer or the bread machine, and she's really gonna love you. But anyway, so the mill came in our home in February of 1991. So 33 years ago, I guess. It changed our life. I mean, I milled the flour and I made the bread. First off, it was nothing like the store-bought whole wheat flour. And you're probably already noticing I'm a pretty passionate person, and I'm all in. I told Dr. Ben Edwards, I said, I'm all in for real bread and I'm all in for Jesus. That's just who I am.
100%.
So when I read that and saw the connection, I was like, we're doing this. We're going to do this. And I really thought, I was like, if we have to choke this bread down, we're eating it. We're not going to ever eat white bread again. So that was kind of my thought. So the mill came, I milled flour, I made bread. It was the best bread I've ever tasted. And y'all have experienced it. It was fluffy. It was light. It was not dry. And that was no white flour, no white sugar. It was absolutely delicious. My children loved it. And I also laugh and say, I've done all kinds of things over the years in my study, green drinks, brewer's yeast, all those things. Pretty nasty tasting, some of them. And my kids are like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
No, not happening. But this was like, here's our new bread. And they loved it. Muffins, pancakes, donuts, cinnamon rolls, bread, pizza. I mean, it was just cookies, everything. They loved it all. And so this was very exciting to me, that it was healthy food that I didn't have to coerce my family to eat. They were going to eat it. And I learned grains are the most nutrient dense food God's given us. Jesus compared himself to bread for a reason. So I made the bread that day. I ate the bread that day. I don't know where you want to go with this podcast,
Yeah.
but
So
I pooped the next morning, and that was like, this is glorious. So it drastically changed my health and the health of our family in the first day, in the first week. We just began to notice more energy, less sickness. My kids in a month no longer had snotty noses. I didn't crave sweets. I was getting the good carbohydrates and energy that my body needed. And with 5 young children, you notice, and I homeschool. So I was a busy mom. And so my dependence on antihistamines went completely away in a month. And so guess what I did? I pulled out my biochemistry books, and I'm like, what is in this that's doing this for me? And it's just been an amazing journey, and I continue to learn, and I continue to just be excited. So that's kind of where we got started.
That's fantastic. Well, first off, what did the mill look like? I mean, the first time I've seen a mill was, 9 months ago.
Oh.
What in the world did the mill look like in 1992 or one?
My little mill that I started with was a little cube like. It had a stainless steel base. It's called the Magic Mill, and it was loud. It was really loud. I thought, Lord, I'm going to live a long time, but I'm going to be deaf, And so then I think it was 93 or 94, a newer mill came out called it was called the Whisper Mill, which everybody laughed, but it definitely was a whisper compared to the first one. Well, I can grab it if you need to see it, but
I'm blown away that you've been doing this for this long, and we're just hearing about it. It's amazing how far ahead of the really massive movement you were. And one more quote, and then I want you to define for like the people like me and listeners, like what are you talking about fresh mill flour? So I want to talk about one quote you said in the book, and then define it for us, and then we'll get into just some topical stuff, and just we can kind of like shotgun approach like questions. So you referenced, I think it was in your book, that since 1992, out of your 11-person family, y'all have only been to the doctor a few times.
Hey, y'all. I just want to make an observation. When I see someone going through a legal situation, it seems like there are way too many unknowns. Well, the Allen firm provides legal guidance so that you can make a great decision, come to a resolution, and be at peace. For more information about the Allen firm, visit allenlawfirm.com.
Yeah. That's a biggie. Yes. So in 25 years of raising my children, we only needed 3 doctor visits for them. And my husband says, you really can't count one. It was an ingrown toenail that got really infected. Had I known them now what I knew then, or had I known now, then what I know now, I wouldn't have taken them for that. But 2 of my children got whooping cough, so that required a doctor visit. But other than that, I mean, the kids were just so healthy, and that is huge. There are people that have to take their kids to the doctor or urgent care twice a week, much less twice in 25 years, you know.
Okay, I'm blown away by that. So I want to alert people, like, this is serious stuff. Like, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And then, okay, start by defining what in the world, because there's some people listening that are like, what in the world is fresh milled flour? Like, really? I know that's super elementary, but I didn't even know what that was a while ago. So, and then talk about that. And then what's a wheat berry? And then we can get into some deeper questions in that. So,
okay, you should have warned me. Do you want me to go get my wheat berries?
we're good. Yeah,
Okay.
start there.
So it's just the whole grain. A lot of people have not ever seen whole grain wheat. So we just start with the wheat that's whole and intact. You know, the wheat is made, it's a seed. So the seeds are made of the bran is the outer portion. The germ is the interior portion. Where the sprout comes from, that's where we get the word germination and germ. And then the rest of the flour is the protein. I mean, the rest of the grain is the protein and starch. The bran is several layers. It has all the vitamins, all the minerals, all the fiber, all the just proteins. A lot of people lump carbohydrates in this category over here and don't realize we get a lot of protein from that. The germ is loaded with fatty acids and vitamin E. Richest food source of vitamin E is wheat. So, and then the rest of the portion of that grain is the endosperm, which is most of the grain, and that's the white flour. So when the steel rolling mills came on the scene, they sifted the bran and germ away. So we lost all those nutrients, all that fiber, all those vitamins, all those minerals, and we're left pretty much with protein and starch. So when I say freshly milled flour, I start with the whole grain. I pour it into my grain mill and it makes flour without sifting anything away. And the problem that I also learned is one of the reasons they started sifting the bran and germ away is because once the flour is milled, those nutrients are exposed to the air and those oils are exposed to the air, oxidation begins. And not only do you lose nutrients, but the flour starts spoiling and going rancid. And so that's why they started sifting away so that it would extend the shelf life of it. So freshly milled, by that, I mean, when I want to make muffins, I turn on my mill, pour my grain in, and I make my muffins right then with the flour. I mill the flour as I'm ready to use it.
Okay.
So, and a wheat berry is just another name for a seed.
Okay. When I needed to hear that, there's some people who needed to know what you're talking about. So
yeah.
Is that process, does that take long to get it through the mill and grind it and just have a bowl of flour?
Seconds.
Okay.
I had cream of wheat this morning for breakfast. I put a little handful of wheat in I actually used a blender for it so it would be coarse ground, but no, a grain mill. It's so funny. When I first started, I would take bread everywhere, you know, and people would go, oh my gosh, this coffee cake is so delicious. I want your recipe. And I'd go, well, all right. I said, I'll give you the recipe, but I mill my own flour. And they would look at me. They always asked me 2 questions. First one was, you do what? And I'm like, I mill my own flour. And then the second question just cracked me up for so many years. They go, where do you live? I think they were picturing a big barn, you know, with an ox. Maybe I was even the ox. I don't know, or a water wheel or something. And I go, I live in a tiny little house with an electric mill that sits on my counter. It's about that big. I don't know if you can see. It's not big at all. It has a canister attached. I turn it on, pour the grain in, and it mills a pound in 30 seconds or less. It's very, very fast. And the nice thing, it's stainless steel milling heads. The one I use is the Wonder Mill. I love it. It's just fast and clean. It'll grind any kind of grain. I'm Southern. I love cornbread. You have not had cornbread until you grind your own corn right before you're ready to make that cornbread, and just make it. And, you know, people are like, how do you have time for that? It's as fast as taking the canister of flour out of the cabinet. It really is. I mean, by the time you get your other ingredients ready, your flour's ready. So that's
Yeah.
how I live. Rice, beans, it'll grind any kind of dry grain or bean into flour.
Okay, perfect. And they can get links and information on,
Yes.
your website. Okay. Well, let's get into a few questions. And there's a lot here of material. So, Sally or Julie, do you guys have anything you want to start to start the questions? Well, we have a captive audience.
Well, I had just one of the questions that I had when I first got into this was about just the storage of grains and where do you get them? And when Josh first brought it home to me, I was in a like he would get up in the morning and grind his own coffee beans and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And I even thought that was a little much for the coffee at that time. But now, I am grinding coffee and grinding wheat berries, but where do you get wheat berries? And I know you have some resources on that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we, most of our wheat products come from a grain elevator in Montana. Montana and the colder, drier climates grow the best bread making yeast, wheat, holy cow, grows the best bread making wheat if you're going to use yeast bread as the leavening. Southern United States, where I'm from, grows something called soft wheat. We still get some of our soft wheat from Montana, but we also have some that's Georgia grown. Soft wheat is more your pastry flour. It's good for cakes, cookies, biscuits, and pies. So doesn't that make sense why Southerners traditionally we eat biscuits instead of yeast bread? Now, of course, with shipping, we can do it all. But I grew up very Southern, and we never had yeast bread for dinner. We had cornbread or biscuits. And so we do get most of our hard wheat, it's called, from Montana. We have a grain elevator there. He contracts farmers to grow the wheat for us. We bring it in by the semi truckload. We get in about 45,000 pounds of different kinds of wheat, rye, spelt, kamut. Those are all different varieties of wheat. We get those in and package them up. The enemies of wheat are moisture, rodents, and bugs. So when we get our wheat in, we package it up in 6-gallon food grade buckets with carbon dioxide gas to protect it from moisture, bugs, and rodents. They could chew through the bucket if they knew it was in there, but it's pretty protected. And then wheat left whole or grains in particular left whole and intact are storable. That's what people don't realize. They are storable. They're just, and left whole and intact, they're just as nutritious today as they will be next week, next month, next year, 10,000 years from now, or 3,000 years from now. There's tombs in Egypt that were discovered that had kernels of wheat in them, and they were believed to be 2,000 and 3,000 years old. And when they planted them, they grew. What does that tell you? That wheat was still alive. And so that's what we're going for. To me, I tell people wheat is the ultimate live food or seeds, because they can reproduce, So that's how we get our grain in and we package it down. We get barley and oats from another supplier in Minnesota, I think. I can't remember. And the beans come from different places, but most all of our wheat, spelt, rye, kamut, soft wheat, they all come from an elevator in Montana. We bring it in something called big totes. It's like 2,000-pound bags, and then we package it down there at our facility into buckets. Yeah.
Okay. And so these 1-gallon buckets and 6-gallon buckets that we've picked up our wheat berries in, they're storable in those buckets for just lifetime.
Yes. Some literature says 25 years, but I hope it's longer than that, because I have some Y2K storage in my basement still. That we started we started our business in 1992, but we incorporated with a friend in 98, right around Y2K. So the stuff we had bought for that didn't go into the business. So it's still here in my basement, and I'm believing it's still good.
That's awesome. And then for your everyday use of the grains, how do you store them at your house? Do you put them in small containers in your pantry, or?
I do. Some of them I have in smaller pails. I have a carport right off my kitchen. It's not a garage, and it doesn't get super, super hot here. I mean, it can. You don't want the wheat to be stored like in a closed garage where the temperature might get over 90 to 100 degrees. That really affects the germination. But I go through mine so much. I have my big buckets of the ones I use the most, my hard red, my hard white, my soft wheat, just sitting, I'm pointing to my back door, just sitting right out here. We have a very small house, so I store it right out there. I have a shelf out there, and then I have pails of corn and rice and millet and Ezekiel mix that I use too. So I have smaller 1-gallon pails of those. But I do have some glass jars that sits on a shelf that I have some of my other grains in that I can go to and get them out of that.
All right.
And so I had never made a yeast bread before in my life. And about 6 months ago, I was at Julie's home, my sister-in-law, and she introduced me to Dr. Ben Edwards and your podcast. And she showed me her mill. And Julie has chickens and cows. And I just thought, okay,
All right.
good for you. I'm so excited. Well, I listened to the podcast. And I was one that went home and asked my husband, can I have a meal for my birthday?
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I did.
And then I came home, and I actually had a friend here in Dallas that had me over and showed me how to make the bread. And so we were talking. I was telling her about Julie's mill, and she said, oh, I bought one last year. I just haven't used it yet. So she started practicing, and then she had me over when she started making the bread and taught me how to make the bread, which is basically a 3-hour process. And I was hooked. And so I started making the bread. I think it's way more difficult than it's easy, but I mean, it changes with the weather.
Yes.
I just fell in love with making yeast bread. I've heard all of the things you've said from the people that I've made bread for, which is my eczema went away. My stomach doesn't hurt anymore. My daughter this morning just told me, well, I haven't been sick since you started making the bread.
Wow.
So I can testify to all the things that you have been saying. But I hear often, can I eat this bread because I'm gluten intolerant? So what would you say to someone who says, my doctor told me that I cannot have gluten?
Unstuck Coaches hates it when movement and progress in a person's life or business is stuck, or frozen, or slowed, or just stopped altogether. Well, we have found a solution. Unstuckcoaches.com. They offer a variety of coaching services to get you or your business moving again. Check out unstuckcoaches.com.
Yeah. Wow. That's a loaded question because there is so much anti-grain, anti-gluten information out there. The truth of the matter is celiac disease is a genetic inability to break down one of the proteins found in wheat, which is gliadin. And that's what forms that stretchy substance called gluten. That's all gluten is just the stretch, but it comes from these two proteins, gliadin and glutenine. And a true genetic celiac is born with the inability to break down that gliadin. But here's the thing, it affects less than 1% of people in America. That is not at all what we're seeing in this world today. The symptoms of celiac disease, you're usually diagnosed by the time you're 7 to 10 years old. You're the child with all the stomach issues, stomach pain, usually anemic because it lays down the villi if until it's diagnosed and you avoid it. So now what's happening is the bread that's in the store is protein and starch. So we've sifted away the bran, the fiber, the nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals that keep our guts clean and things moving. So because we've just now been eating this way for 100 years, we are developing the same symptoms of someone with celiac. We have the gut issues, our villi is laid down, we have the leaky gut, we can't absorb nutrients, we have chronic stomach pain. But the problem for most Americans is not gluten, it is the white bread. And people say, oh, well, I don't eat white bread, I eat the whole wheat bread. Well, look at the label, they're adding lots of extra gluten flour to that. So that's the problem. So what I have found, and we have hundreds of testimonies now, is when people eat the bread, the flour, even wheat flour, the way that God intended it, with the bran and the germ intact, to get that your bowels moving and your colon clean and your digestion working properly, they can eat wheat just fine, even though it is not gluten-free. It has those proteins in it, but that was not the issue. And not only are they able to tolerate it, they're thriving and they're finding health again. Yeah. So that's what we're seeing. So a true genetic celiac will never be able to eat wheat, probably. I've been talking to Dr. Ben Edwards, and he's saying we could turn that gene off. So I'm not, but that's my understanding. Most of the people being diagnosed, number one, they've self-diagnosed. 60% of people is what they're claiming or believing are self-diagnosed. They've never gone to a doctor for an issue, for a diagnosis. They quit eating bread and they feel better. Okay. So it's first time in all my years of studying that allopathic doctors and more alternative doctors have all jumped on this same bandwagon of no wheat, no bread, no gluten. And because, yeah, it might eliminate your symptoms for a little bit. But what I'm finding is when you start going down this path of elimination, I've had so many people say, well, I quit eating bread, I quit eating wheat, but now, and then next thing you know, I can't eat dairy, can't eat eggs, can't eat this, can't eat that. I had a lady in one of my classes came up to me and said that she went down this path. She was to the point where she could only eat 7 foods. 7 foods. What? So what they're finding is they mill their flour, they can eat it just fine. The abdominal cramping goes away because their bowels get clean. So not only, like I said, it's not just a matter of, oh, we can tolerate it. They get well. They find healing. I had a mom of a young child, took him off of gluten, took him off of bread. She heard me just describe what gluten is. That's all it is. It's technically a culinary term. Grains don't even have gluten. It's a culinary term for the stretchy substance that forms when you need that bread. So she went home. Her son was on gluten-free diet. He was on all kinds of medication. She just started milling wheat and making bread. The next thing you know, within about 6 months, he was off all medication. He was doing well. It's just amazing. So that's what I would tell them. Try it. If you're not a true genetic celiac, and this is what I tell people, if you're 30, 40 years old and you've just been diagnosed with celiac disease, chances are you're not a true genetic celiac. And I've also done a lot of research. I finally found some research that called it non-genetic celiac disease, and they were healing it with fiber and probiotics, totally reversing it. And another thing that people don't understand is going gluten-free. If you start eating the gluten-free products in the store, they are terribly unhealthy for you. And as a microbiologist, I've always studied the microbiome and the importance of gut organisms. It changes your gut organisms. And I read an article recently where they are finding that it increases the pathogenic organisms and decreases our good gut organisms when we go on a gluten-free diet. Now, like I said, there may be people that legitimately need to, but I'm not finding those to be very many. And we know, like I said, hundreds of people. So I would encourage you, try it. Listen to my podcast number 66. It's my favorite, of Sarah Valentine. If anybody had could be a true genetic celiac, she was diagnosed young. And was gluten-free for 15 years, but her mother and her brother found health through milling flour. And she came home for a weekend from college and they encouraged her to try it. And she said, she, with fear and trembling, because she was just like never compromised on gluten. And she said she never slept as good as she slept. She didn't have a headache. She pooped the next morning, the best in years, and she was a believer. And it's an amazing testimony. And there's others as well. So
I listened to that story, and she
Yeah.
was the one that went to the hospital. Was she the one that went to the hospital, was hospitalized?
no,
Okay.
no, I don't think so.
Okay.
There was
Well,
another
you
one,
have
Hannah.
another
Hannah
story where someone almost died, and she had doctors on hand when she ate your bread just to make sure she didn't have a
Right.
reaction, and she didn't. So,
Yeah.
and there are so many different testimonies out there about that. So
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Well, I find it amazing that it's not only that, most people who have gone gluten-free, not only can they have the bread, but that it's a superfood for them,
Yes.
right? Like
Yeah.
this is, I know I've heard that it has 40 of the 44 essential nutrients that our body needs
Yeah.
to be well.
Yeah. So basically, wheat has all but 4 nutrients: vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, and B12. So eat your bread, eat your fruits and vegetables, get outside in the sunshine with no sunscreen. I said that.
this brings me great comfort because I have a few kids who do not take vitamins. They don't
Yeah.
want to. So I'm just like, eat the bread.
I know. I tell everybody before bread, you have all these children. I don't know about you guys. And when you have toddlers that don't want to eat and you have a sandwich, right? So before bread, I would take the meat off the sandwich and say, here, just eat the meat. After bread, I take the meat off the sandwich and go, just eat the bread, and that's what I loved. And my little toddlers, they all quit wanting to eat when they get to where they're active and can get around. They'd rather just, take the pain off, eat a little bit, and then they want to go play. But my sixth child, she would just come in, and instead of saying she's hungry, she would say, I want to roll with honey. And that was like, here, just eat the bread, and because it's so nutritious. I think when Jesus said to them, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that goes forth from the mouth of God, they knew what he was talking about. And I think he was reiterating the fact that you can live physically off of the bread that you're eating of the day, but that's not, and so I think he was reiterating that you can live physically off the bread. And I think we've way overcomplicated eating in this world today. I've traveled now on mission trips around the country, and most of them, it's beans and rice and grains, and that's what they live on, and they eat very, very simply. And it just, yeah. So I'm with you. Just eat the bread. I don't care if you don't eat the broccoli. That's fine.
Julie and I were laughing about that because that was one thing that really was kind of convincing us on the book, and just to even kind of dive into some of the stuff you were doing. We're like, I mean, in the Bible, it talks about bread in a positive light the
All the
whole
time.
time. Like, why is it so negative? Like, we can't eat it here to get off bread. So
I know.
that was the whole thing.
All
Yeah.
right,
You had something, yeah.
man. Okay, so I won't speak for Josh, but for the Micahs and the Joshes that are going to listen to this podcast, there was a whole lot of stuff that I have no idea about. So I'm assuming you have resources on your website to kind of help me, because I know on your website you have like 15, 16 different grains. How am I supposed to know what I'm supposed to use those for? Like, is it within the recipes? Is it all that other stuff? So just tell me like an easy way for the Micahs and Joshes to go get some of this information.
Yeah.
Even so we can maybe, well, I'm not going to let Josh make bread, but if we wanted to go make bread, how we can do that.
Yeah. So on our YouTube channel, I have a basic list of getting started items where I kind of go through things. Number 1, you need a grain mill. You just need a grain mill, and go ahead, bite the bullet, get an electric one, enjoy electricity while we have it. So get a grain mill. So that's your first. Then I tell people getting started, hard wheat, if you want to make yeast bread, soft wheat if you want to make cakes, cookies, biscuits, non-yeasted bread. So that's your basics, and that's your wheat. If you're a cornbread lover like I am, get you some corn. If you like oatmeal, get you some oats. So those are your basics. And then honestly, the recipes are very simple. I mean, it's oil and water and honey and salt and yeast, and we have some great instructions and recipes. If you really want to just set it and forget it type of lifestyle, we do have an auto bakery bread machine, the Zoharushi. You can just dump the ingredients in, press a button, and come back 3 hours later to a baked loaf of yeast bread. Muffins are easy, and for some people, that's a great starting place. Those are baking powder, baking soda, salt, and you stir those up in 5 minutes, pop them in a muffin tin, and they bake in 15 to 20. So, if yeast bread intimidates you, I'm like you, Sally. I think it was you that said you had never made yeast bread. I had never until I got married and started on the journey of wanting to eat healthier bread. But it's super easy. So you need a grain mill, hard wheat, soft wheat, and there's varieties. There's hard red, there's hard white, soft red, soft white. Red is a little nuttier flavor, white is a little milder flavor. I would suggest getting some of all of it, of the hard red, hard white, soft red, soft white, and just experiment. And you can go to our website. Like I said, we have a YouTube channel, and there's I think it's part 1 and part 2 where I go through the ingredients and the tools that you need that will help you on this journey. So, but just the mill, just start with the mill, start somewhere.
Yeah, that's a good question, Micah. That's helpful.
I'd say,
Go ahead, Jill.
I'd say buy you the mill and Sue's Essential Homegrown Flour book too, because that just is a wealth of information of, I read through it once, just kind of pretty quickly. The back half of it is recipes that that's how I make my bread every day, is from the recipe in the back of that book. And starting with that, and then I've just gone back and reread it now that I understand more of the terms. Have gone back to reread. When my roll turns out dense, why is that? Because all of that information is in Sue's book.
Yeah. And it's really not that hard. Like I said, I grew up Southern, and my mother never made yeast bread. My mother worked her way through Wesleyan Women's College in Macon, Georgia, making biscuits in the cafeteria. She was a pastor's wife, and she had to help supplement the income. And her mother, my grandmother, worked her way through Young Harris College making biscuits in the cafeteria. So I come from a long line of biscuit makers, and I'll never forget when I started making yeast bread. My mother loved it. She was like, oh, she loved my cinnamon rolls. And that was just so foreign to her because they just didn't make that. And she looked at me one day, and I said, my mother is very Southern accent. And I said, Mom, you can do this. I'll get you a mill and I'll teach you how. And she went, no, yeast bread scares me. Just like that. And I'm like, don't be scared of it. It's yes, there's some science to it. And like you were saying, Julie, some days it's dense and everything, but it's real forgiving. You just kind of start dumping in, and you'd never do that with a cake or something. But so yeast bread is really easy once you learn to look at the dough and what it's supposed to look like, and using the right grain. And that, I will say, that is one reason we get our grain, our wheat, our hard wheat from Montana. Other states grow it, but it's just not as high protein typically. Okay. Those cold states, the Dakotas, Canada, Montana, they really grow the best yeast bread making wheat, hard wheat. So that's why we get it from there. So yeah.
Go for it, Micah. Get you a bread maker.
I'm intrigued as well as why, since she's a Georgia fan, she can't get Texas wheat. So I think it's just anti-Texas all.
Listen, their wheat is not as hard and high of protein.
I know.
It's just too hot down here.
Listen, I go to speak in Dalhart, Texas, and I stay with a family. And I asked the husband, I was like, so what do you do? And he goes, I grow wheat. And I'm like, oh, okay. You got a farm. Like how big's your farm? 30,000 acres. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a little nice sized farm you got going there. And then I looked at him, I said, so how come we're shipping so much wheat to you? And he goes, I've been wondering that same thing. But a lot of times, where it's not as hard a wheat, where it's not so much for, it's not as high a protein, good for yeast bread, which Texas is kind of border there. A lot of it is grown for animal feed. So, so that's, and like in Georgia, most of the wheat grown here is animal feed. So we just found a farm that's going to grow, is growing soft wheat for us. So that's nice. So we can get that locally, but it's not as cold, even in your more northern part of Texas. It's not as cold there. And so it just doesn't grow as quite as good a yeast bread making wheat.
Well, that's okay. We'll eat we like Montana too. We can
Yeah. Well,
so
hey, listen, I don't, I'm not buying a lot of wheat from Georgia either. So
Well, and
um
Micah,
yeah,
I
sorry, go
will say that our 9-year-old makes pizza dough, the a yeast pizza dough, and our, 11-year-old followed the recipe and made hamburger buns for the family one night. Like this is, it is fun to do,
yeah.
and it's simple. It like you said, like it can be time consuming to make the yeast bread from start to finish, but that's not the whole time. You're not standing in the kitchen
Right.
making it. You're letting it rise for an hour, 2 different times, and
Yeah.
but it's simple enough for a child to make the bread. And if you don't have the time to do that, Micah,
yeah.
Yeah, I like
Bread
how
maker.
you just looked at me
He
when you're
needs
like,
he
a
needs to do the
child
bread.
could do this.
He needs to do a
Yes,
bread
a
making.
child.
we'll let Ellie teach you, Micah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah,
And
I'm your 6th kid, by the way. That's fine.
when I've talked to Dr. Ben Edwards, he's the bread maker. And the last time I was there, he said, yeah, I went to head to bed at 10 o'clock at night and realized, oh, I don't have my bread for the morning. He goes, went back to the kitchen, 10 minutes. I pushed the start button. The thing about the bread machine is it has a time delay. So you can throw everything in there in 5 minutes, come back. Wake up tomorrow morning to a hot loaf of bread. So that's nice. Now, when my kids were all at home, I used a mixer. We sell the Angstrom mixer. It's the largest non-commercial mixer sold, because I was making yeast bread, 6 loaves twice a week for my family, and interspersed with muffins, with pancakes, with cookies, with donut, whatever. So that was a tool that really, really helped. So it just depends on your family. Get the right tools, guys. Just like y'all have the right tools for your yard, you need the right tools for making the bread, making it the easiest way possible. So, and that's what I also love. I found a good yeast bread recipe that was very forgiving, very easy to make. So I make a big batch of dough, and I make pizza dough out of some, garlic rolls out of some, hamburger buns out of some, all the same dough, donuts, cinnamon rolls, it doesn't matter. Now I have some other yeast bread recipes in my book that I developed, but my go-to is my basic bread dough. Yeah. And
Julie and I can testify. We both love that recipe.
It's just so easy.
She has written out, the double version, triple version, and all of my friends have. Julie's written down a copy of your basic yeast. One of my friends has it laminated.
Oh my goodness.
But I would say, because here in Dallas, in my world, like all of a sudden, almost everyone I know is milling wheat. And so, quick question. Did you feel like you were just alone on an island in 1991, or has this always been going on and we just were completely unaware? Because now it seems like I'm worried about wheat shortages, because in my mind it feels like everyone is milling. So I want to make sure I have enough wheat for my family. But what is your take on that, Sue?
Well, when I started in 1991, I homeschooled my children. So it was a big kind of movement going through the homeschool community. So no, I didn't feel too alone, though I didn't have anybody really to teach me. But like I said, I grew up cooking, so I just kind of did it, and kind of plugged along. And then when we started our business, because of the health benefits that our family saw. And then like you, Sally, I started sharing bread with other people. Next thing I knew, I was making bread for other people. I had just had my 6th child in my tiny little house and homeschooling. And I was literally getting kind of worn out. And, but the people started having testimonies. When an elderly lady tells her friends that her cholesterol dropped 85 points in a month and all she changed was the bread, they all wanted bread. And So maybe a little bit, but not really. I mean, it was kind of a movement in the homeschool industry, but we've moved way beyond that.
Yeah.
And I remember the day in October, late October of 1992. I was worn out one day from making bread for myself, my kids, my family, and all these people wanting me to make bread for them. And I met my husband in the driveway of our home, and I said, I don't think I'm supposed to make bread for the world. I think I'm supposed to teach the world to make bread for themselves. And that's when it started. And it has grown way beyond the homeschooling movement, but that's where we got our start. And and they were very
You're a trendsetter.
I guess I don't know,
I
but
know I'm such a late laggard. What's that bell curve? The early adopters, the whatever, and then the late. I'm like, we're like 30 years behind the game on this, Sally. I don't know why we're just not catching this.
well, listen, how I would listen to my major. How did I not see this? How did I not know this? 20 years after I graduate from college. And it's the same with doctors. When doctors would come and to my seminars and hear me speak, they would come up and go, how did I not know this? How did I miss this? And I'm like, yeah, join the club,
Yeah.
So and I think it's really as the health of America continues to decline, people are looking for answers, and I think they're finally realizing we gotta look outside the box. I don't think high cholesterol is coming from deficiency in a cholesterol lowering medication, or you know what I'm saying? And so they're looking for answers. And I have, in all my years of studying and all the things I've tried, for health, this is one I'm still doing 33 years later. And I'm as excited, maybe even more so today than I was 33 years ago when I started. There's not many lifestyle healthy, our New Year's resolutions usually gone out the door within 3 weeks, not 33 years. And I've never seen any one change in your diet bring such immediate, significant, and noticeable benefits. I mean, I just read a testimony. Somebody emailed me yesterday. Her blood sugar, her A1C dropped 4 points in just a matter of a month or so. Cholesterol drops 85 points in a month. And see, what I would do when people would tell me this, because I didn't have those stories, I didn't have those issues, I would pull out my biochemistry books and go, what nutrients are needed to lower your cholesterol? Well, vitamin B1, inositol, choline, lecithin, vitamin E, vitamin B6. It's all prevalent in the bread, abundant in wheat. And same with blood sugar, fiber. We need it to slow the release of the sugars into the body. It's there. It's in the grains. Energy, that slow release of carbohydrates from the slow digestion of the grains from the fiber. That gives you your energy, your sustained energy, instead of you're shooting up and dropping down. So it's just been kind of a whirlwind for me of just keeping on. And I stand amazed at, the testimonies that I hear. It's just been amazing. So, yeah.
All right,
So
I
think it has kind of reached, what's the word? Snowball effect now. We're seeing people just coming in our store, and not just homeschooling families like when we started.
Right.
Had a 94-year-old man in my class Tuesday night, and I said, Mr. Wallington, when did you start making your bread? He goes, 35 years ago. So he would have been in his 70s, or right there. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. But that's what we're seeing. And like I said, as the health of our nation continues to decline, people are looking for answers. And I've never seen an answer as significant as this one that covers so many bases and so nourishing and so satisfying. Isaiah 55 verse 2 says, why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your earnings for what does not satisfy? That's a pretty amazing scripture when you really, really think about it. And then Haggai says, you earn much, you sow much, but you reap little, you eat, but nobody is, full and satisfied. And it says, consider your ways. And I think that's what people are doing. They're going, something's got to be different. This is insanity.
Yes.
All right, so I got another, just one more science-y kind of question.
Okay.
There's all this stuff with health as far as what kind of oils you're supposed to use and not use, and I know sometimes in some of these recipes it calls for oil.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is your take on seed oil or not seed oil? Do you replace it with X?
Yeah. I use predominantly extra virgin olive oil, and we get it from the Isle of Crete. We visited the factory there and the farms. It's a 5th generation family owned farm, and we know that it is truly extra virgin olive oil. A lot of what you buy in the store is not, which is
Correct.
terrible that our powers that be don't monitor that and protect us from that. But so I've gone with extra virgin olive oil. Seed oils, the problem with seed oils like corn, the hard seeds like that, they have to have a solvent to be extracted. So that's the problem with seed oil. So I have moved totally away from like soy and corn and those things. Sunflower seed oil, I think, is great because I've been to a place in South Georgia that sells sunflower seed oil, and they press it. That's all they have to do to it, is just press it. So just depends on the source, but harder seeds like I said, like corn, I just don't use those, and because why are they clear? And yeah, there's just some questions. Now, I have been to Ireland where they grew rapeseed, which is canola, and there's a bad reputation of canola oil in this country, and I don't use it here, but I watched them harvest the rape seeds and press it right there, and it was the most beautiful, bright golden yellow color. They wanted us to import it, but I'm like, I don't think I can sell rapeseed oil here because of what America has done to it,
Well,
so that's my take. My fats that I use are olive oil, real butter, and I'm pretty particular about my dairy and my fats. I go organic with those animal fats. So real extra virgin olive oil, real butter. I use unsalted butter, and coconut oil. I do an extra virgin coconut oil. So outside of those, I know there's avocado oil. I'm fine with that, but I do avoid the seed oils that you're talking about. So like soybean, corn, that was the other one. I couldn't remember.
I'd say that's probably the two main things Julie and I did with our family, kind of at Ben's recommendation and stuff we've heard from you just on eat the fresh meal bread and avoid seed oils. And I think
avoid
my
processed
biggest
sugars.
testimony, and the avoid processed sugars, I want to ask her about that. But I mean, my biggest testimony is I haven't taken Advil in almost 9 months. I used to take it every day on trips. Like my head would just hurt every single day. And I haven't
That
had any antihistamine, I haven't taken any allergy medicine since then. It's hard
that's
to even
amazing.
explain.
I know, that's amazing. And that was me too. The antihistamines, I thought post-nasal drip was the way God had made me. I was always congested. By the time, I was an adult and had children, I just seemed to have to take an antihistamine of some kind, at least at night, to be able to sleep, because you lay your head down on the pillow and you just close up, you can't breathe. And when we started doing the bread, within a month, I didn't need the antihistamines anymore. And part of that, I explained, I have a 3.5-hour video on our YouTube channel. Micah, just watch me in segments, and that'll blow your mind. But what I learned, and finally, I understood the constipation, but what we don't realize is when our bowels aren't moving every day, that's trash that your body wanted taken out. If that trash is sitting in your body, it's getting absorbed into your body. Your body's response to toxins is to make mucus so you can blow it out your nose or cough it up or whatever. So when my bowels started moving every day, the toxins and the trash were getting taken out. So that eliminated all the sinus congestion and the mucus formation. So I no longer needed the antihistamines. I mean, think about it. I don't think we think logically too much. Like with a cold, why do you get a snotty nose? Well, it's because that organism is foreign to your body and it's making toxins that your body doesn't want. So we make this mucus so we can blow it out our nose. Unfortunately, in America, we take antihistamine, which dries it up, doesn't take it out, dries it up. And so we are we're living a very toxic life. The headaches, I think, is attributed to the same thing. When you get a kind of like when you try to go off caffeine or you go on a fast, those toxins get released into your body and you just get headaches. And that was, Josh, that was another thing I had. I had headaches regularly. I didn't take too much medication for it, but I just always kind of had a heaviness, a little nagging, just kind of ache. I could live through it. Although I had migraines every now and then. And since the bread, I've not had headaches. I've not had migraines. Nothing. I laugh and tell people I do buy a little token bottle of Advil in case we ever need it. And I hurt my shoulder last January and something, I don't know. And I was in pretty excruciating pain and I had to take Advil just to be able to survive, you know. And so I went looking for the little bottle and it had expired in 2017. So that tells you how, and if it expired in 2017, that means I bought it a couple of years before that. And that was terrible. And that really upset my stomach. Caused me some pain, almost ulcer-like pain from taking that. So I finally just had to get some relief other ways. But yeah, and just think about, like you were just saying, you took it every day. And I know people that have inflammation and injuries and they take, I know someone that takes 8 a day. And I'm like, you've got to be destroying your stomach and your intestinal tract. Just
so I guess here's another kind of question I had too. Thank you for explaining all that. I mean, it makes sense. Can you eat too much bread?
I don't think so.
I mean, we know as far as like,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about some kind of like bread eating challenge type of thing. Like, I mean,
Right, no.
because you know
He's
the
asking
thought.
for the general. He walks through the kitchen and grabs 5 rolls.
I mean,
off
is like 3 rolls too much or this, and then I get another one? Like, is it because you know that's the stigma, right, with bread
Right.
anyway? Is like,
Right.
I'm controlling calories. I can't eat too much or whatever. Like, can you eat?
I know.
Is it,
Well, first of all, we're so dosage minded in America. People ask me, how much bread should I eat? And I'm like, just eat it. I don't know. I don't think about it. My meals are all revolved around what kind of bread I want. You know, if I want cornbread tonight, I'm probably going to have chili. If I'm Mexican night, I'm doing tortillas, you know, and I love rolls and I just don't think you can eat too much. Now, what you do need to remember, the extra fiber requires extra fluid. So you need to be drinking. So that would be the only thing if you eat too much without drinking water, you know,
like it's not directly connected to like if I eat a bunch of this bread, I'm gonna start gaining weight.
No.
You know, that's how people like
No, in fact,
like bread.
I think the more you eat, the more satisfied you're going to be. You're not going to crave sweets. You're just going to have more energy. I tell people whenever they ask me how much bread should I eat, I'm like, Jesus compared himself to bread. How much Jesus do you need? Just every day, every way, eat it, you know? And like I said, other countries, carbohydrates are their mainstay. And when I say bread, it doesn't necessarily have to be a dinner roll or a slice of bread. It could be a pot of beans and rice. It could be oatmeal. This morning I had cream of wheat. That's bread to me if it comes from a grain. I think, you know, the average daily suggested amount to eat was 6 to 9 servings a day. That's a lot. And so I say eat the bread. If you don't eat anything else, eat the bread.
Yes. Miss Sue just said I could have 15 rolls.
I know. My kids.
Isn't it so funny?
I'll never forget years ago.
Send you a bread maker.
Years ago, this lady said, she messaged me. She goes, I know I'm gonna get fat on this. And this was when we had a bakery, and she came to our store and bought a bakery, which we do not have a bakery anymore. So yeah, so she said, I ate 5 slices of that raisin bread before I even got home, and she goes, I know I'm just gonna get fat. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. Did you eat dinner? And she goes, no, I was too full from the bread. I went, there you go. Those 5 slices of bread with maybe 400 calories of all 5 slices. I bet your meal would have been a whole lot more than that. And you know what's exciting to me too is vitamin E is a nutrient that is not much in the American diet because of it's stripped away with the processing and everything. And when they refine fats and oils, it diminishes the vitamin E. And when we had our bakery, we had it tested. We sent it to a laboratory. A lot of your nutrition labels, they plug the recipe into a database, but we wanted to see, and it was so funny. The laboratory called my son-in-law and said, what are you putting in your bread and to enrich it? And my son-in-law said, nothing. And she goes, no, what I'm asking is, what vitamins are you adding to the flour? And he goes, we're not. And she goes, no, what? And she asked like 3 times. And he goes, we're not. We are freshly milling and making the bread as soon as the flour is milled. One slice of bread made with freshly milled flour, 100% of your vitamin E recommended daily dosage. Now, I think that's low, your recommended daily dosage. One slice has 100% of your vitamin E recommendation for the day. It had the B1, it has the B2, it has to be the B3 without being enriched. And see, that's what I think after the first of the year, one of my podcasts I'm going to do on vitamin B1. When the steel rolling mills came on the scene in the early 1900s and they sifted the bran and germ away, 3 diseases became epidemic shortly after. By 1905, 30,000 cases of pellagra was diagnosed, and they finally traced it that it was a B3 deficiency, niacin. And it was because of the bran and germ being sifted away, we had lost that source. Vitamin B1, thiamine, is resulted in nervous disorders. So these were epidemic. I'm talking significant. And they traced it to the bran and germ missing from the flour. And then the third disease, so beriberi, pellagra, and anemia. So these all came on the scene by 1910. This was all over the country. Health officials were like, what in the world is going on? It took them 48 years, 1948, before the government stepped in and mandated that they had to enrich the flour. They first asked the millers to put the bran and germ back in, and the millers were like, no, we're not doing that because we're selling the bran and germ to the cattle feed industry, which is still done today. And so we're not going to lose that very lucrative market. So it took almost 50 years. Then the government said, okay, you got to enrich the flour. So this is what blew me away with that article. For the 35 to 40 nutrients that you lose when you take the bran and germ out, because white flour's protein and starch for the most part, they only put 4 vitamins back in. Synthetic. Well, 3 B vitamins and iron, a mineral. B1, B2, B3. When you take those B vitamins out of context with the rest of the B complex, you really mess up a lot of things in your body. And that's why and then it took, well, let me finish that thought. It took 50 years later, after watching the rising incidence of birth defects, that they figured out it was the missing folic acid that was no longer in the bread that we were eating because they took it away from the bran and germ. So they put a synthetic folic acid in 1998. And supposedly this stopped beriberi, pellagra, and anemia. But I have to ask this question always. How many nervous disorders do we have in this country today? And pellagra is skin issues, GI disturbances, mental insanity. When I did research on pellagra of the 1900s, first case was actually diagnosed here in Atlanta, Georgia. But they said in Georgia and South Carolina, which the mainstay of our grain was wheat and corn, corn doesn't have niacin particularly high. So when we lost it in the wheat, it said the mental institutions in Georgia and South Carolina were literally overflowing with patients in those days. They couldn't figure out what was going on. So I'm not talking about, a few people had, dementia. And there again, what about all the dementia now that we're seeing, the Alzheimer's that we're seeing? Could it be, that we're missing the correct nutrients in our bread? Because what they fortify with is synthetic. Now a whole new syndrome, if you want to call it that, is surfacing. MTHFR. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Yeah. Have you heard about it, Julie? Yeah. That's where people cannot break down the synthetic folic acid that's in the bread that they're fortifying it with. But what people are with MTHFR are finding, hallelujah, we can eat the real bread from freshly milled flour that has the natural folate, and it's giving our body what we need. So we have created a monster.
Wow.
And if you go down the rabbit hole, you can trace it, and it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Well, we might. Gosh, it's fascinating. I love just hearing you talk about it. It's just all. I mean, it's almost like hidden in plain sight,
It is.
you know. But I think we probably have time for maybe one more quick question for each of us as a wrap up. If there's any other comments, and then we probably should stick by because I could probably just ask you questions for another 2 hours, Sue. But Julie, Sally, Micah, do we want to ask her one kind of final thing as we kind of land the plane? Everybody at once. Also, just
Well, I would just ask, some of the things that I see all around me are things like high blood sugar in people, and even rates of cancer and stuff going up. And I've even noticed that if you go and you just park at the grocery store and watch the people coming in and out, our country just does not look healthy.
Yeah.
At all. And I'm excited for the bread, because from the time I was a child, if you could only give me a roll for dinner, that's what I would have chosen. And I find it so freeing to just be able to make the bread for the family and have as much of it as we want, and
Yeah.
and that be our main food around here.
Yeah. And that's what I found as well, is that it's freeing. It's very satisfying to know that you're putting healthy food on your table for your family. People used to say to me, "Oh my goodness, you must spend all your time in the kitchen." And I'm like, actually, no, we spend less time. I had teenagers, by the time we were well into milling, and they were always in the kitchen before bread, scrounging around for food. Just as soon as we get breakfast clean, they were back in there, sit down, let's do school. And they were, oh, we're hungry. After bread, we were early risers. We ate a big breakfast. No one said anything till sometimes around 2 o'clock. They go, are we going to have lunch? Then they'd start thinking about it. And they even begin to comment on their friends, how they eat and snack all the time. My children were just after bread, never snackers. We ate a meal. We were satisfied. And that's what Jesus said. He said, I am the real bread of life. He who comes to me shall be satisfied. Again, they knew what he was talking about. And
Right.
it's very satisfying. It's very nourishing and filling, Josh. That's what I'd tell people. You just cannot eat as much,
yeah, we've noticed that we'll be going all day and just like I'm not that hungry. Like,
Yeah.
I think my kind of question would be as my final one, maybe wrap up is how did you have to do anything specific to get your kids to catch the love of it as they were graduating and going? Because we have five ourselves, and some of them I don't know, like it's like some of them really get it, and I mean they
Yeah.
love it. I mean everybody loves it, but is this going to continue on after they graduate? I can't
Yes.
control it, but how did you give us some tips
Well,
on this?
Give them a
sometimes
meal for graduation.
Yeah.
sometimes you have to let them miss it, like when one goes, oh, my stomach, I need bread, and they all know, my kids all let's see, all but one have grain mills. They mill, they make their bread, maybe not as consistently as I would like. In fact, when I go to their house, sometimes I go, Mom, do not look in that cabinet, just do not. But they
They
all
better
are.
put some white bread in that cabinet. Mom's gonna get mad. Store brought white
Yeah.
bread.
But several of them are very, very consistent, and they'll find their way back if they leave, especially like when they go off to college. I had one lady tell me recently that her son or daughter went off to college, and she was like, Mom, I've got to have bread. This is terrible. I feel awful. They'll notice it. They'll begin to see the difference. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
I just do. I just want to thank you because this opened up a whole world for me. And I think Julie would say the same. The bread started me down a journey of reading ingredients and changing the quality of food that I buy at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And my mother jokes that my girls' childhood, I have 3 daughters, and their childhood will be marked by before mom started milling and after mom started milling, because I
Yeah.
stopped buying all packaged things, and I stay at home, and so I'm able to make, sausage balls for their after school snack or muffins or
Yeah.
whatever. But it really just opened my eyes and towards a healthier lifestyle for my family. And so thank you for just being out there and sharing your wealth of information with all of us. I've listened to so many of your podcasts, and like Julie, and read your book. Just I'm trying to learn, and everything I can testify, everything that you say is true. So anyway, thank you. Thank you for letting us talk with you today.
Oh gosh, thank you for that encouragement. And it is, and my passion is to help people. I hate it when I see people that are sick and I'm just like, the bread would help that.
Yeah.
And because I've just seen it and studied it and figured it out. And when people share a new testimony that I haven't heard, I'm like, how is this possible? So I look it up again, and thank you. I'm just very pleased that God has called me to this, and that I'm able to see the benefits of it with others.
Thank you, Sue. Tell us one last time the best way for somebody to connect with you and get more information. And again, thank you for letting us all pick your brain and making time today. It's super cool. And what you're doing is blessing everybody around us.
Hey,
in Texas here. Okay,
wait,
Micah.
So Sue, when Texas gets past Oregon, where are me and you going to watch this final third Georgia-Texas game for the national championship?
Well, the key is Texas has to get past Oregon.
Yeah,
so I'm not worried about my Bulldogs.
It'll be fine.
We might meet up again third time.
Because you can't beat a team 3 times in a year. So bad luck for you. Bad luck for you.
All right.
Maybe your team should have some of the bread, Micah.
I know.
Well, I just
Sue's
remember
probably been feeding the Bulldogs. You don't know.
Last time I was in Stephenville, someone said they were going to give me a loaf, and then I didn't get one.
Oh man, yeah. Well, you need to stay up with that. That's funny because years ago, Coach Mark Richt, who was the coach of the Georgia Bulldogs before Kirby Smart, he and his wife were customers of ours, and I saw Miss Richt at a homeschool show, and I said, I know y'all take the team out of town even for home games for breakfast and for, just to get them away from Athens. I said, I would love to come and just do breakfast. And she goes, let's do it. Let's do it. And then I was like, I would not want anyone to be going, I need to go to the bathroom during the game. So I never pursued it. But anyway, that just maybe you shouldn't air that.
That could have been, that could have backfired.
Yeah. So, but anyway, but
okay. Well, tell us the best way to connect with you, and we'll wrap it up. So thank you.
Okay. So breadbeckers.com is our website. Go on our website. We also have breadbeckerscoop.com if you want to find if a co-op is in your area. And we, our machines, we sell mills, mixers, bread machines, they all ship free. So that's a plus. Grain is heavier. That's why we have the co-ops. It's pretty expensive to ship UPS, but we have the co-ops and can help you also get a better rate even than what our website shows. So, and then our YouTube channel it's Bread Becker's YouTube, and then Sue's Healthy Minutes podcast. And if you need help and need questions, our staff, they all mill their flour and they all make their bread. So you don't have to just connect with me. So you can support at breadbeckers.com is just a great way to, get your questions answered. I really, really, really recommend any listener. I know it's long, it's 3.5 hours, but it's called Only Real Bread is the Staff of Life. And that will convince you, if anything won't, but because I take you through the history of white flour and then digestion and some of the common diseases and just show you significance. And I'll say this in closing. All these years, 33 years, the most important appliance sitting on my kitchen counter is my grain mill. I wouldn't trade it for anything. So
perfect. Sue, thank you. Bless you. Really appreciate you making time.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to hearing more about you and following all your stuff. Thank you so much.
And I will say in closing, go Dogs.
Yeah, we're there, Micah.
Thank you for joining us on this latest edition to the StoryField podcast. We hope that you have been challenged, inspired, and ready to take that next step, whatever that is. If you know someone with an amazing story that needs to be heard, send us an email at info@thestoryfield.com. Have a fantastic day, and we can't wait for you to join us on the next episode of The StoryField.